Welcome to the Social Regressive, where recently we launched a whole new series on the Savage Model 10 GRS. And yes, you did hear me right, I said series, not single video. We're not going to just take a look at accuracy and functions on this thing and, just come up with a quick thumbs up, thumbs down. We are going to be testing this in a variety of scenarios, long range, mid range. We're going to be shooting at some interesting targets. We're going to be doing some interesting challenges, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. We have a Bushnell HDMR2 scope on top. This has a Horus H59 reticle. We'll be breaking that out into its own video. So this is going to be a really interesting project, and spoiler so far, this thing is shooting quite well, and I expect it to perform really well as the series progresses. But lest I be accused of some kind of bias towards Savage, we're going to take a look at a new rifle. And it's a Savage. This is the Savage B22, specifically the FV-SR. So you get a bit of a heavy barrel and it's threaded. And you can see that this is a whole new design. This is a very fresh new rifle. And you might be wondering how this kind of slots in with the Mark II. I think that this is probably going to be a replacement for the Mark II. They'll be phasing the Mark II out over time. We'll see how that goes. They're still producing very different models of the Mark II right now, and we'll see if this kind of takes over some of those. But you can see it's very interesting. They've definitely gone with a new design on the stock, and it has a lot of the same properties that the Mark II had. Good accu-trigger. It does make some changes, like a change to the magazine. We'll take a look at that here in a second. But it's a good pattern overall. And we're going to be doing a whole series on this rifle as well, because I don't just want to get out and show how the rifle shoots at a range. We're going to get out and have some real fun. We're going to do another international egg challenge, I think. We're still working on the specs on this thing, but there's a guy out in Ireland named Emrad, and our channels are going to be working together on this, and we're going to get as many of you as want to get in on this thing too. We're going to shoot some eggs at various ranges, and this one's going to be more about speed than the kind of slow fire that we did with the center fire rifle egg challenge. Now, I'll put the link to that video over here. We're going to be taking a look at this scope. This is the Weaver Grand Slam Multi-Stop, which is one of the weirdest scopes that I have ever seen. This is right up there with that funky Leopold kind of offset periscope thing. It is just brilliant. The thing that they did with this turret is it's a work of genius. It is quite bizarre, and it really works. It's really good. And of course, the glass on this thing is excellent. This is top notch. It looks like it's right up there with that Bushnell HDMR2. So we're going to be breaking this out into its own video. And then we'll be doing some stuff. We might be able to get out long range with this. And I also have some plans to shoot this in what's called a small bore silhouette match. And silhouette, if you've never shot it, is extremely difficult. By comparison, F-class is a very forgiving and kind of fun thing to do. You go out on a Saturday, and yeah, it can be frustrating, and of course you're trying to get in on that 10 ring, but if you hit a 7, at least it still scores. With small bore silhouette, if you miss, that's a 0. It's a total binary score. You either hit or you miss, and it can be really frustrating because you're shooting at these minuscule steel targets out at 40, 60, 77, and 100 yards. But it is a lot of fun, and we're going to see how this thing works. If the shooting that I've done with this is any indication, I think that it's going to do just fine. It's going to come down to me and how well I can shoot it and how well I can estimate wind, like usual. But yeah, I expect the hardware to work really well. So let's take a close look at that hardware, and let's see what makes this rifle what it is. Let's start with the most obvious difference between the B series and the Mark II series, and that's its appearance. I really like what they've done with this thing. I think it looks really nice. I love all the little kind of planed sections on the stock. I like the straight comb back here, the more vertical grip. And the action even has a couple cutouts that complement the rest of the rifle so it flows a bit more. I think this thing looks really nice. And in addition to the stock being a bit more, the best description that I've seen is more Buck Rogers than Roy Rogers. In addition to those changes, it really feels very, very nice. The grip is very comfortable for the hand. It's quite good in the prone and standing, shooting offhand. And the forearm here is a decent width. You know, it's not going to be too big for a child or anything, but as an adult, I don't feel like I'm wrapping my hand all the way around this thing and touching the barrel, which sometimes you get on .22 rifles. So overall, I think that has worked out really well. The barrel is quite heavy, and you can see that this FV-SR model includes some threading at the end of the barrel. This is half 28, and I have put on a YHM Phantom, not just a flash hider, but this is also the adapter for the silencer series that they have. This is my YHM Phantom titanium silencer, and I use this on all of my rifles, since it works for everything from 300 Win Mag on down. Nice to have one can, and then you can just put different adapters on different rifles and it works. The Action offers some upgrades over the Mark II, and the most obvious for people that have owned the Mark II before is going to be the safety right here at the back of the tang, rather than up on top over here where it might be a bit more difficult to reach. This is very easy to actuate. And speaking of easy to actuate, the bolt is quite smooth. You have a very long reach here and a checkered bolt knob. And the Action itself is very reliable. I had no problems feeding any kinds of ammo, hollow point, whatever. It all ran very smoothly through this new type of magazine. This is a rotary type, kind of like what you get with the Ruger 1022. And this holds 10 rounds right here. I haven't heard of any aftermarket yet, but again, this rifle is just brand spanking new, so it'll be a while before people catch up. It feeds extremely well. The magazine, I will say, is a little bit tricky to load for those first bunch of times you do it. The springs start to kind of break in and it gets easier over time. But don't be surprised if you have a really tricky time getting the 9th and 10th round in there the first time you load these up. Now for something really interesting. Right here at the front of the Action is a barrel nut. And for those of you that shoot Savage centerfire rifles, you know what that's all about. That means you can set headspace on this thing and you can swap barrels. And I was talking to the guys at Savage. Thank you, Savage, for sending me this rifle, by the way. And they said that this is a common action for the 3 chamberings that are available. So that's .22 Magnum, 17 HMR, and this model, which is .22 long rifle. So they all share the same action, and they all share a similar bolt, I guess. And it could be that once you buy one of these, you could swap over to a different chambering. Maybe you could have a 17 HMR barrel, 22. Of course, I expect that you would also have to change out that bolt head. I'm not sure about that because the head diameter on those is different. 22 is not the same as 22 Magnum, and 17 HMR I think is the same as 22 Magnum. So there might be 2 different bolt heads, but hey, if they start selling those parts, this could actually be kind of a switch barrel system. That would be really neat to see. Like the Mark II, the B series does include the AccuTrigger. This one pulls at just a little bit higher than 2 pounds, and it actually does have some creep in it, which I was a bit disappointed about. I'm used to a Savage trigger, especially the AccuTrigger, having no creep in it, and this one is palpable. Now, this could be one that is going to break in over time. My old 12 FV did have that issue. It had a little bit of creep at the beginning, and it eventually worked its way out, but I'll let you know in the final review how this goes. The B22 FV-SR did include this extended Picatinny rail. Before I shot this, though, I wanted to make sure that everything was tightened down appropriately, and when you get a new rifle, I recommend you do this. Take the extra parts off, make sure that everything is torqued down correctly. I used a Weaver torque wrench, and I tightened everything down to 15 inch-pounds, and I put a little Loctite on there just to make sure that nothing goes anywhere. The Weaver Grand Slam multi-stop scope, thank you Weaver for sending this out to me for evaluation, is being held in place by Weaver lever lock rings. I've used these rings on some of my rifles before. They are reliable. These are made of steel, and you can see that they just have a single screw, but again, these are steel, and this is a .22 rifle, so yeah, it's plenty for the job. and these do return to zero. I have removed these rings before. I've swapped them around, put them on different rifles, or, taken the scope off, put them back on. And yes, these things do return to zero. They work quite well. The dimensions of the stock seem to be a compromise. The forearm is long enough for someone with long arms like me, but the buttstock area seems to be just a little bit short. It seems to split the difference between a youth stock and an adult stock. This comes in at a 13-inch length of pull. That's the distance from the trigger face to the back of the butt pad. However, I did notice that there is a removable butt pad. It's just a piece of plastic back there, but it does come off. So it may be that in the future someone will create extra long butt pads for folks like me. Target time. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, so feast away. All the shots were taken at 25 yards off this Champion Premium Rest. The review on that is forthcoming. Make sure you subscribe so you can check that out. And let's take a look. First, we have Federal Bulk Pack. This is Federal 745. These are hollow point, high velocity, and these are the sort of things that you used to be able to find at Walmart way back in the day, and that group is coming out less than 3/4 of an inch. Moving on to the other stuff that you can pretty much find in your sporting goods stores nowadays. These usually sell for anywhere between 20, 25, 30 bucks for the Federal Auto Match. And this is coming out about a 1/2 inch right there. This is Federal 729. These are 40 grain lead round nose. These are supersonic. And you can see that that's coming in more like 1/3 of an inch right there. We also have another group here just to, I guess, test that. It almost looks like the exact same group. Again, this one is, just about 1/3 of an inch. It's a bit over 1/4 of an inch. This is an ammunition that so far has been working out really well in all of the 22 long rifle guns that I've been checking out. I have some other reviews on the way. This stuff is amazing. Federal 38 grain hollow point. This is 730 is the designation for that. This shot really well in all the rifles, and this one is coming out to, again, about 1/3 of an inch, much like that 40 grain stuff. Moving on to the next target, this is Federal Gold Medal Match, and this is coming out to be about 1/3 of an inch, much like the other stuff that we saw before. This was a standout that I really liked. This is subsonic 22 long rifle HP from CCI, and this is one I'm going to break out a whole video on. This is supposed to be coming out of the barrel at about 1050 feet per second, and the neat thing about this is that, okay, it's a 40 grain bullet, and it is a hollow point, so it's set up for hunting, but this stuff cycled in every semi-automatic action that I tried. This stuff is amazing. So yeah, that's going to get its own video, and it tended to shoot very well. So this one is a bit over 1/3 of an inch. It is still quite small. And over here, everybody knows about mini mags. These are some round nose, kind of really high velocity stuff, 40 grain. And this one is coming out to about a 1/2 inch. Yeah, that's about a 1/2 inch group. Now those two targets that we took a look at, those were all shot through my suppressor. It's a YHM Phantom suppressor, and those had the effect on the Model 10 GRS of tightening the groups up, and these are the ones that I shot unsuppressed with the same rifle as the B22 FV-SR, and I just took the silencer off, and let's see how these did. Alright, so first off, we have that Federal Bulk Pack again. This is the 745. Okay, so that's coming out about a 1/2 inch. That one, I think, is a little bit tighter, if I remember correctly. Auto Match. That is coming in about 5/8 of an inch. That's about how big that group is. It's still quite nice. This is the stuff that's been working really well in everything. The 38 grain hollow point. And this one, unsuppressed, is coming out to be, again, about 1/3 of an inch. Quite small group. And here is the 40 grain. It looks like this one was a bit more allergic. Now this is actually not a flyer. This is not from that group at all. This was something else I was shooting later that day. But this is about a 1/2 inch. Moving on to the second unsuppressed target. This is the Federal Gold Medal Match. So that's coming out about 5/8 of an inch right there. The subsonics that have been working so well for me, that's coming in about a 1/2 inch. over here with the mini mags, this one is super, super tight. This might be the best one that we've gotten so far. Yeah, that's 1/4 of an inch right there. Wow. Yeah, I really like that. I forgot how good that group was. Since 25 yards is cute to the B22 FV-SR, I did step things back. So here is 50 yards with the 38 grain stuff that I said was running so well in all the guns. So at 50 yards, we are looking at about 1/2 inch. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. And then we decided to step things back a little bit further to 100 yards. And here's a little inset footage for you, just so you can see that, yeah, these are all going into the same target at roughly the same time. And this opened things up. It was getting a little bit windier as the day progressed. And at 100 yards, we ended up a bit over 1.5 inches. Based on my testing so far, I think the Savage B22 FV-SR is a series of compromises that actually worked out really well. A lot of time when you have a compromise, you sort of lose anything that you would want on either end of the spectrum. It's neither one thing nor the other, and it just kind of ends up being a mediocre thing that you don't really want. And this goes in a different direction. Even though this does have a heavy barrel like you would want from a prone style of rifle, it's short enough at 16.25 inches that it actually balances really well, even with this plastic stock. And even though the stock is a little bit short for what I need, I usually need a 14.5 inch length of pull, it actually is comfortable enough, and the comb, since it's straight, I can adapt myself to the rifle pretty well, and I can adjust my eye relief here, and it works out really well for me. Of course, some of the things where they haven't compromised, as you can see, is the accuracy. This thing is shooting very, very well. And no matter what position I'm going to be shooting this from, whether it's going to be standing or prone, this thing is going to be up to the challenge. So let's get to testing. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the destructive arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.